Hello there, kia ora. Language is a fascinating tool. As a communication tool, we can learn a lot about the positions our media takes and the positions our politicians want us to take by looking at the language used. And this weekend, we saw some really fascinating examples of it. And they were all kind of centered around David Seymour. Seymour actually impacted the way three different media outlets made decisions on how to platform issues related to his stance and views, all in different ways. The first was a story on RNZ about a public meeting that Seymour had in New Plymouth. It pointed out that there was about 200 people there. They were mostly older, Pākehā presenting, and it described them as quote unquote highly engaged on Māori issues. Now, sarcasm doesn't translate all the time in written form, and I really hope that that's what RNZ was going for, because highly engaged here is easily interchangeable with incredibly racist. One attendee said Māori were like seagulls. If you feed them, more come and start crapping on you. There was talk about how much Māori blood makes you Māori. Māori elite redefining te tiriti to serve their own needs, and that before colonisation, Māori were always at war, killing each other anyway. These are quite clearly indoctrinated racist views. To platform them as highly engaged on Māori issues is clearly downplaying that racism. One of them even mentioned a post doing the rounds on far-right social media about John Tamahere and how much people at the Waiparere Trust get paid. A post with no evidence, references, or confirmation. But it's been taken as gospel by those who want to believe the disinformation, which are exactly the sort of people that Seymour likes to target. But we'll get into that shortly. The second event was Seymour's appearance on Q&A with Jack Tame. In it, Seymour was pushed back on trying to muddy the waters between what does actually exist in the founding document and its direct meaning with what he thinks should be the interpretation. He tried to twist out of the fact that as a Minister of the Crown putting forward a bill to change the meaning of te tiriti, it's seen as one partner in the agreement making unilateral decisions without the other. He tried claiming that at least colonisers never put Māori on reservations like the USA, but ignored the fact that confiscated land and military actions confined Māori to specific areas, like the King Country, and limited their access to resources just the same way that reservations did. He called it a cute argument, being given the data and facts that contradicted his stance, and began talking about how the real problem with te tiriti isn't about equal rights, it's about resource management and access. He made a blatantly false line about students being pulled from classes and being forced to learn Te Reo Māori. It was painful in places. The third media event, though, was the most surprising. The All Blacks played Italy last game for TJ Perenara, and he led a haka for it, calling for people to honour the land and te tiriti, which was cut from the All Blacks online channels. Sky Sports still showed it on theirs, but an argument around sports and politics mixing was dredged up with it. A line used to justify not allowing Māori All Blacks to play in South Africa during the apartheid years, and one the people of this country in the 1980s showed that they do not agree with. The last one is kind of fascinating. It led to an alt-right meltdown about the All Blacks going woke, just like car manufacturer Jaguar, and apparently ruining our international reputation. They complained that Jack Tame was too nice to Debbie Ngarewa-Packer, too mean on Seymour, not allowing him to answer questions by constantly correcting him, and it was nice RNZ were finally talking to real Kiwis about the issues facing them. All of this, though, is really important in highlighting public pressure for and against Seymour's bill. In media theory, we can look at something called the agenda setting theory, where media is used to set up narratives that the public can get behind. And politicians of every stripe are always trying to get media to do this, and David Seymour has tried really hard to do this. This bill in particular has led to Seymour getting exponential coverage in media because he's the go-to person every time one of hundreds of groups or experts or individuals come out and say that this bill is dangerous and wrong. But there's also an evolutionary element of this theory that we call opposition agenda setting, where those in opposition forcing a narrative change from those in power. When a vocal opposition drowns out support for a policy or action, you'll often see politicians change their stance over time and adopting similar positions to the vocal opposition that they're receiving. It shows media agenda setting works both ways when public outcry is so strong. And arguably, the opposition to Seymour's bill is the most vocal opposition that we've seen to a bill in generations. While this opposition won't change Seymour and ACT's plans, it does have other impacts. It sends a clear message to other coalition members that the bill is unpopular with voters, and it makes it much harder to justify messaging from media giving Seymour an unfettered platform. It makes sycophants who support this bill seem even more isolated and even weirder than they already are as they lash out, which creates even more public pushback. The downside is that this is often a slow process. It can take time for political parties to change in a way which isn't jarring to their core follower base. And simple narratives like Seymour's, who could argue against everyone being equal, is deliberate to appeal to uninformed voters. It's actually a method he championed in his book, Birth of a Boom, where he claims special interest groups and simplistic messaging allows ignorance to dominate voters and exploit their unwillingness to educate themselves on complex issues, like the restitution and redress process involving working through te tiriti. Now, just because research shows keeping up public pressure should help ensure coalition parties that they may feel like they're no longer at the mercy of the whims of a minor party, and that they shouldn't consider flip flopping, there are still steps that people can take to ensure the messaging that we see is having less impact from Seymour and his crowd. Educate those around you about the complicated issues at hand. Point out the methodologies being employed to keep them happy and uninformed. And make sure you're working on that pressure towards MPs by making your voice heard. And one of the ways you can do that is to get your submission in for the Select Committee if you haven't done so already. Knowledge is power, and your voice can be as loud and persuasive as any politician's. Wait, you're still here? It's over. Go find another video.